Hello, everyone. Welcome to another of our Saturday Anything Goes. Sorry, this is a little bit later on Saturday than what we're used to, but I had an Ink and Crew meeting this afternoon, and so just got back from that. I did want to make sure that we did a Facebook Live today, though, since we have missed a couple previous ones due to all the traveling I had to do. Anyway, I took little treats to our meeting this afternoon, and I love Ghirardelli squares and wanted something cute that I could package them in to put around the table for everyone else to enjoy. Watched a YouTube video and saw this delightful little treat box. You're going to be surprised at how quick and easy this is to make too. It opens up just like this, so you don't even have to take the belly band off, although you can slide it down to make it a little bit easier if you want. And it has just enough room in it for 2 yummy Ghirardelli squares. It's also a great way to use up scraps of your DSP. And that was what really intrigued me, because I've been being really good about cutting into my DSP and actually using it, but it's so beautiful that I don't like to throw any bits of it away. So this was just perfect for that. I did a couple of cutouts and also used some of our beautiful pearlized doily. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, you need to start out with a 5x5 sheet of cardstock, any color cardstock you want that will coordinate with your strip of DSP. So you need a 5x5 sheet of that. And then, oops, forgot to pull it out, so bear with me a second, but we need, obviously, some of our DSP. And the DSP that I use is, this just beautiful pearlized DSP. I mean, who wouldn't love that? As you can see, I'm saving all my little scraps. And so I'm going to, I think, continue with the same. Well, let me see. Hold on. I also have a scrap of this. Ooh, that might be yummy too. I'm thinking I'm going to stick with that. But really, you can use any DSP that you happen to have scraps of. You'll need a 1-inch strip of that, and I want to say it's 7 inches long. So let me cut this to 7 inches real quick, and then I'm going to show you how quick and easy this goes. You will need your envelope punch board, but other than that, there's really not much scoring other than we are going to score our DSP strip in a moment. But let's get down to the basics. Put my inks away for now. And you'll bring in your envelope punch board. I haven't gotten my Stampin' Up! One yet. It's on my list to order, so I'm just using an old one that I happen to have around. They're all going to basically work the same way. My 5x5 sheet I'm going to put in, and the only 2 score lines and cut lines you need to worry about are the first 2. After that, you just kind of follow it all the way around. So let me pull out my handy dandy little score tool that came with it. And we're first going to line it up right at the 2-inch mark. Pull that down so you can see. So there's our 2-inch mark. Punch. And if you've never used a scoreboard before, this is how easy it is to score it. There's a notch right here, and if I tip it up, you'll be able to see. See this notch right here? There's also a line, and you can see it better down here, to where if you just put your score right there, follow it straight down, and it gives you an even score line all the time. So that was at 2 inches. Now we're going to move it to 3 inches. Put it right there. Again, I'm going to punch and score. Now for the rest of it, we're simply going to follow these score lines. So I'm going to flip it 90 degrees, And instead of worrying about going up here to the 2-inch mark, and I certainly could do that, but my score line is right here. So I'm going to line up this Dumaflagi little, what would you call it, guide with that score line, punch and score. Oops, if I can get my blade in there. And then I'm going to move right to the next score line, right there, punch and score. And we're going to repeat that on all 4 sides. So lining up the score lines is the important part. And once you've got those first 2 down, then it's just follow the leader all the way around. All right, one more side. So we're almost done with this part of it. Whew, that was a tough one. Those little bits that you're punching out tend to build up underneath. So it gets a little bit harder to press when you get several of them in there. And I'll show you what I mean. See these little bits? They all kind of stack right up on each other. So I'll just toss those away. Now, before we put our envelope board up, I'm going to turn it around because there's also a corner rounder on this end. And we do want to take and round our corners. So just pushing it in until it's flush. And I made 9 of these, and really it went very, very fast. So this is a great thing to do if you need a bunch of little somethings. Okay, that's all I need. So I'm going to go ahead and put my punch board away. We do have a little bit of cutting that we need to do. And see if you can see all of those score lines right there. So you've got 4 corners, and they're actually little squares. We're going to remove 2 of them completely and then just cut up the inside score line to make little flaps on the others. So let's do that now. So I'm just going to cut both of those score lines up. I'll remove these bottom ones, just like that. So I've got that one done. And now I need to do this one. And I always like to cut a little bit to the inside and get that rough score line out. So we've cut those 2 completely off. We're going to flip it 180 degrees. We're not going to cut these 2 off because we need them as flaps for our box. So I'm just going to cut up either side. All right, and that's what's going to form our box. Now we can go ahead and burnish our score lines. Just like that. So for all 4 sides. This would also be great for a craft you can take traveling with you, because the only thing you'd really need to take would be your envelope punch board, as long as you cut your 5x5 squares ahead of time. Okay, so there we have the makings of our box. What we need to do for our box is we've got our 2 flaps here. We're going to put adhesive out here, and then this is going to fold up on either side, just like that, to form the bottom of our box. And then these 2 corners will come in, oops, like this. Come on, get in there. There we go. And we will secure those down. You can use tear and type, you can use glue dots, you can use liquid glue, whatever you want. And then this is what will actually tuck in underneath our sentiment panel. All right, so let's go ahead and glue this down. And for my flaps, I like to use my liquid glue, because that way I can make sure that I have them in the right position. I can wiggle it around a little bit. So pull this up and make sure that you've got nice corners. and just hold it there. Give it a moment to bond. And then we can move on to our next one. Again, making sure that we have flush corners. It's important on this box. And just holding that together. Come on, get in there. Sometimes it's easier if you fold these bits back. Okay, and so there we have formed the bottom of our box. All right, now before I construct the rest of this, I found that it was easier to do so if I actually went ahead and put my squares in there. That gives it some structure so that you can make sure your box is squared up and not in too far or out too far. And I'm going to go ahead and attach these again with my liquid glue. Remembering that we're only going to be doing this bottom portion. Give that a moment. And you actually could just attach it right there. I guess I just kind of like putting a bead down that whole side to hold it in place. Put a little more right there. There we go. And you can see how having those Ghirardelli squares already in there helps me make sure it gives me something to press against, and also for me to be able to make sure I'm getting my box square. And I can test that squareness by just pulling down the lid, and I can see it fits pretty flush. Okay, so that's our box constructed. Nothing difficult about that. Now we're ready to move on and decorate. Let me bring the other one in so you can see decorations were really minimal. Other than my strip of DSP, I took maybe a fourth of one of our pearlized doilies and attached it, and I just simply attached it only to the flat piece. And then I cut a couple, stamped and die cut a couple of leaves from the beautiful Promenade stamp set, and then a stitched shapes circle that I went ahead and stamped my sentiment on. This sentiment happens to be from our Eastern Beauty stamp set. I just love that stamp set, and I'm so happy that they carried it over because it has a lot of great sentiments in it. And that one, I mean, if you're going to give somebody a treat, it's a way to enjoy that part of the day, right? All right, so we'll put that aside. To save time, I went ahead and already stamped my sentiment and die cut it, as well as I stamped and die cut my leaves. But I wanted to give it a little extra pop of color because that white kind of gets lost against all the white and the pattern on the DSP. So for that, I just pulled out my trusty blends, and I used the Old Olive Light to color in the leaves. Let me grab that real quick. Only takes like 2 shakes. Really easy to color in. You certainly could get more detailed if you wanted to do shading and everything, but this works just fine. And I know that there have been some concerns about using your blends with our ink pads rather than using Memento Tuxedo Black. So far, with the colors I've used, I've not had any problems with stamping with a colored ink and then using blends on it. I do recommend, though, that you test each color together just to make sure that it's not going to wipe out the detail of the stamping. Those are our leaves done. But I also, even though I'm going to pop up this sentiment, I wanted to define the edges a little bit. So for that, I took our Granny Apple Green ink, my favorite ink color so far, and a sponge dauber. Where'd my sponge dauber go? Well, I had it here a minute ago. Well, I'll just grab a new one. Always have to have plenty of sponge daubers. And very lightly, I'm going to get just a bit of ink on here. And then just simply lightly flick. I don't want a ton of color, so I'm just very lightly flicking my dauber around the edges. And if you do get a little bit that goes over the edges, that's no worry. It just makes it look more organic. And we all know nature's all about being organic. Okay, and you can see that that adds just a pop of color. Trying to be very careful with my inks because, hello, I wore white pants today. Not very smart of me, but I have those ready to go. Now we need to put our belly band on. And measurements for this, you're going to want to score. Oh, I had these written down, but for the life of me, let me see if I've got those still. We're going to score at, where are you? There you are. 1 1/4, 2 inches, 4 3/8, and 5 1/8. So for this part, we do need our scoreboard. I will pull out the Simply Scored scoring board. Let me move these off so I don't lose them. Oops, sorry about shaking the camera. And I know I'll pull this down. It may be a little hard for you to see because I have the camera zoomed in, but I think I can do it. All right. Get my stylus out. All right, so our first score is going to be at 1 1/4. Right there. Our next one is at 2 inches. 4 3/8. 1 2 3/8 is right there. And our last one is at 5 1/8. And that is all the scoring we're doing. Let's put this back up. And now we'll fold and burnish on those score lines. You do want to make sure that you line up the edges, since this is going to definitely be visible on your box. So take your time with this part. I know one of mine, I got crooked and it was fine. I'm sure I'm the only person who noticed it, but you know how it is. You want it to be as perfect as possible. Okay, one more line. And to attach this, I'm going to use a little bit of tear and tape because I do want this belly band to be stable since people may be moving it up and down. So you're just going to put it at one corner. Not my long corner. Just along one edge. As you can see, we're not using very many supplies for this, and I certainly like that. Okay, we bring back our box, and again, I want the candy in there to give it some stability for when I wrap it around so it doesn't end up collapsing any part. So we'll stick those in there. And then I'm going to put my join at the front. And why am I doing that? Well, because my sentiment is going to cover that up. And that way, if you happen to be looking at the back of the box, it doesn't have a join line there that you can see. You certainly can do it the other way. There is nothing wrong with that. This just happened to be my preference. Okay. Pokey tool to the rescue. And let's just peel this off. There we go. Decide where you want it. And remember, you have to make sure it's square so that you don't have any bunching. And this is where I can get a little fiddly finger because I want to make sure that my ends line up. And there we go. We also want to make sure that it's not so tight that it won't slide up and down. I don't see any reason to take the belly band off because you really, if you slide it down to the very bottom, it's easy to get that flap in and out. But if anyone did take it off, you'd want to make sure it's loose enough that they could get it back on. All right, now let's work on our flap for our doily. And what I found was that the easiest way for me to figure out where to cut on my doily was to actually just hold it up there. And we're going to have it, so I line up the open center with the point, the rounded point, and just figure out how many strips over I need to, how many scallops over. I just counted scallops. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ended up being perfect. And I'll just go ahead and cut it. You can attach it down with mini glue dots if you roll them up. For me, I found that just a little bit of my Tombow multi-purpose liquid glue worked really well. And I'm just cutting off some of the slivered edges there. And you don't have to put it all over. I put it, there's a pretty big strip down here, so I put a thin glue there. And then I just came up, and these scallops have a nice space in them. So just going to take a dab, just drag it across there, and that should work just fine. Now I'm ready to flip it over and attach it down. So line up one edge, that's the easiest, and then line up your other edge. You can even turn it back over and adjust it as needed so that you don't have any showing on this edge. And that's all there is to that. Okay, last thing we need to do is to attach our sentiment and to put on our little embellishments. Let me bring those back into the picture. And you can see that by inking up the edges of my sentiment panel, it's going to help it stand out better from that DSP. I did attach that with a dimensional. And remember, when you're attaching, you want to make sure you only attach to the belly band. You don't want anything attaching itself to the actual treat base box, because then it would prevent that band from sliding up and down. And I actually only just used one on there. So I've got it on there, and then I'm just going to line it up. Try to get it as central as possible. So I'm lining it up on my grid sheet, and then just put it down where you want it. Now, if you decided you wanted to tie a little bow on one side and make that your embellishment, you certainly could move your sentiment panel over more towards the other side to make room. Totally depends on what it is that you're looking for. And then for my leaves, I just straight glued them down, remembering not to put glue where the leaf overhangs the DSP. So I'm just going to stick it down towards more the stem and the bottom of the leaves. So definitely some here, and then the bottom. Whew, I glop that on. There we go. And that will be enough to hold it on there. Okay, so I've got my one leaf there. Be sure you're pressing down on it so that it bonds. And I'll do exactly the same for this side, making note of where it touches that cardstock so that I don't get any there. All right. The one last thing I wanted to do to finish it off was just to add a rhinestone. Let me pull out my rhinestones. You could use an enamel dot, a glitter dot, pearl would work fine. Just, again, depends on your color scheme and your DSP. And I took one of the smaller rhinestones, and you can put it wherever you like. I chose to put mine at the top. And then I'm just going to slide the belly band down a little so that I can slide my flap under, and then the belly band comes back up and it holds it snugly in place. So you don't have to worry about the candies falling out. And they really are secure. I'm shaking the box and they're not falling out. All right, so that was the project that I wanted to bring to you today. Here's both of them. Very, very easy. This would be great. One of my teammates said it would be great if you're having a dinner party to put a little something at each place setting. You could even put maybe the person's initials there or their first name if you have the one of the many alphabet stamp sets that we have. Great for teachers' gifts. I know that summer is over, but winter or the fall session is coming up. And that'd be a way to start the school year off right, with sending a little treat to the teacher from your children. So lots of different ways that you could use these treat box. And they don't just fit the Ghirardelli squares. You certainly could put Andy's mints in them. Anything that is no thicker than probably about half an inch would fit in there. So feel free to fill it up with whatever you want. All right, well, that is our project for today. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Until Tuesday night, I'll say bye-bye now.